Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. We start our video with a story about a friend of our OP whose insolence is just off the charts. So get your nerves ready. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Sarah thinks she's entitled to everyone else's money and time. I'd met this girl at work and we initially became fast friends. It's my nature to buy things for friends. I don't ever expect anything back unless I explicitly say so. Every now and then I'd buy her lunch without any presumption that she'd pay me back. The first time I asked her to pay me back for food, a whopping $8.50, she complained about it and conveniently forgot and made up excuses whenever I asked her about it until she finally paid me back a week and a half later. Now, I didn't buy lunch for her all the time, at most 3 times, but I guess this was enough for her to think she was entitled to my time, gas, mileage, and money. In one instance, I told her and another coworker in passing that I was going to undisclosed coffee shop. This wasn't an offer. She told me to get her a drink, please. I ignored it because unless I offered, I'm not spending money on you. Well, at the coffee shop, they messed up my order and gave me a drink for free, plus the drink I originally asked for. The free drink was too sweet for my liking, so when I came back, I offered it to the other coworker, knowing Sarah would complain about the sweetness of the drink and end up throwing it out since she'd done it before. When I gave it to the coworker, she scoffed and said, "I told you to get me a drink." I just gave her a look and walked away. I'd bought tickets to a concert a few months prior, but the person I initially was going with had flaked, so I offered to give her the ticket in exchange for the ticket plus money for food I'd bought her that she said she'd pay me back for, but once again conveniently forgot. All she had to do was pay $15 for gas as the concert was a city 2 hours away. She actually yelled when I told her that, as if $15, that literally fills up my tank, I drive a freaking Civic, was breaking the bank for her. When the time came to get the gas, she tried to say her card wouldn't work. I told her to call her bank because it'd been 3 weeks already since I'd bought her lunch that she said she'd pay me back for. After that fiasco, I stopped buying things for her or offering her things. Being the fool I was, though, I kept her in my company despite her not being such a grand person. Turns out her entitlement extended beyond my goodwill. A couple other coworkers invited her on a trip. Apparently, she'd sent them a list of things they needed to buy her in order to assure that she'd go on the trip. While on the trip, she complained that she didn't want to pay for anyone else, only took out $30 to spend. I'm guessing she assumed everyone else would pay for her, did not contribute to anything, including taxis or Ubers, etc., then had the nerve to ask them who wants to donate to the Sarah Wants to Wear Lashes Tonight fund. On top of all that, she complained to them about a free concert ticket and how we were late, by 10 minutes, to the opening act. The seats weren't good. Suffice to say, we don't talk anymore. I'm amazed that you kept her around for so long. She sounds very unpleasant. And our second story. Just because we're family doesn't mean we have to break our backs over you. Last summer, my family and I went to visit my dad's cousin in Europe. Not going to mention the exact country, to have a holiday. We drove there with our own car, crossing the Channel Tunnel from England to France, then crossed several other borders to get to this country. Took ages, but it was a fun trip. Had a great time with her and met some new relatives, family of 6 that we hadn't met before. Told them they should definitely visit us in England sometime, out of politeness, even though they didn't invite us to theirs. It was a passing statement, but I thought it'd be cool to keep in touch since they seemed so nice. 2 weeks ago, they suddenly called and said, "Hey, we're coming over to England to visit you." And we're like, "Oh, cool, no biggie." Thought they meant for the weekend. Nope, they're coming over for 2 weeks. And not only that, they want us to drive 4 hours to collect them from the airport and 4 hours back. No one has time for that. My siblings have school, so my mom can't drive all the way there, and my dad works outside the country. They also want us to drive them around England for 2 weeks and show them the sights. They have their own car. We told them it's easier to bring your car to do everything, but they said they don't want to bring it because it's too expensive. It's really not. They just blew through more money on flight tickets instead. And the staying with us for 2 weeks? That's just exhausting. Entertaining family you barely know, cooking food, cleaning house, in a place that has no space for 6 more people? If it was a few days, fine, but 2 weeks? Hell no. They have their own family in England, but they said they don't want to stay with them because they don't feel like it. So we told them, nah, you're welcome for a weekend, but not for 2 weeks because we have other commitments. Guess who got offended? Then they had the nerve to tell us that they were upset with us because apparently we begged them to come stay with them, and they spent money on tickets just for us. Complete lies, of course. If they were super close family, we wouldn't have a problem. It'd be difficult, but for family, we'd do it. We don't know these people, and they made the situation into such a big deal. Guests, like fish, stink after 3 days. That saying exists for a reason. Anyone can be really nice for about 3 days. After that, it's just tiring. And people start getting cranky on both sides. And our last story. Military revenge story. This was back in 2013 when I was based in Holland, British Marine for context. I'd been married to my wife for a little over 18 months when I deployed to Afghanistan. My wife had a job in the British delegation on base and got to know pretty much every Brit and their husband or wife. One day, we were directly targeted by a vehicle-borne IED. Now, whilst it wasn't uncommon for there to be a threat to coalition forces in general, being directly targeted felt more personal for obvious reasons. That was also the day I found out about an RAF guy back in Holland and tried it on with my wife. I found him on Facebook and, still feeling rather raw about Terry trying to blow me up, messaged him words to the effect of, "You go near my wife again, I'll put glass in your throat the next time I see you." The next day, one of my bosses, who was also RAF, messaged me on Facebook to say that this guy has been over to his office and basically tattled on me. He gave me a friendly warning / heads up that this guy could have gone to the MPs and reported me. I have no idea what would have happened, but I acknowledged the warning and said it won't happen again. My boss had my back and actually told him to wind his neck. Fast forward to when I got back from Afghanistan. A few days had passed and I was starting to settle into normal life again. My wife brought it up after explaining she didn't mention it at the time due to my reaction the first time that an Army Sergeant Major had tried to message her via Facebook. He told her she was beautiful and wanted her number. She promptly blocked him. I was PO'd to say the very least, but I understand why she kept it until I was back on home soil. The next day, I went into our department and spoke to my other boss, an Army captain, and told him what had happened, and he said, "Leave it with me." He basically had a chat with him, and nothing came of it. I felt deflated and even more PO'd. That was until our senior military officer came to our department. He welcomed me back and asked how my tour was. Still PO'd, I said, "It was good, sir, with the exception of Sergeant Major D-Bag trying to get round my wife." He was understandably a little taken aback. About an hour or so later, he emailed me saying that he feels the need to do something official about this. Something I'd forgotten was that the Colonel and Sergeant Major belonged to the same regiment, so having one of his own behave like this had clearly gripped him. I told him the full story and provided screenshots of what Sergeant Major D-Bag had said to my wife. For this to go official, my wife had to provide a statement. Unfortunately, my wife is very non-confrontational and said she didn't want this to continue. I respected her wishes of not wanting to provide a statement, but hatched a plan that would be 3 years in the making. The timing's important. I emailed the colonel and said my wife has declined. However, I feel the need for some formal recognition, so I asked the Sergeant Major D-Bag write a letter of apology addressed to both my wife and I, which is to be signed and dated. This was granted, and I received said letter 2 days later. It said, "OP and my wife, I'm writing this letter to both of you to apologize for the torment and anxiety that you both must have felt from the messages that you received from my Facebook account." To OP's wife, nobody should ever be in a situation where they worry about going to work because of who may come through the door, especially so when they have the added stress of a partner being operationally deployed at the time. The anguish that you must have felt at this time is immeasurable, and for this I apologize. To Lance Corporal OP, being operationally deployed is stressful enough without the added stress and worry about family back home. Support from home and loved ones is what carries many people through tough times whilst on tour. For any undue angst I caused, I apologize. I regret any hurt and anguish caused by this issue and apologize wholeheartedly and unreservedly to you both. Signed, Sergeant Major D-Bag. Position held. I now waited. I saw out the rest of my time in Holland and moved back to the UK to my new base and waited some more. Almost 3 years after I received the apology letter, I looked up Sergeant Major D-Bag's wife on Facebook. I'd known the whole time we were out there that he was married, his wife lived back in the UK, and he routinely tried to cheat on her. I sent her the same screenshot which I had sent to the colonel. I also, before leaving Holland, printed off the emails between the colonel and myself where I requested the apology letter. I blanked out the colonel's details and sent the pictures of that. And then lastly, I sent a picture of the apology letter, signed and dated by her husband, admitting what he'd done. Once I saw she'd read it, I blocked her. Blocked Sergeant Major D-Bag and all his friends who'd also been out in Holland at the same time. Why 3 years? I remember him saying before he turned into a D-Bag and tried it on with my wife that he only had 3 years left to serve. If my timing was correct, he was just months away from completing his 22 years and receiving a very nice pension. If his wife decided to go ahead with divorce, she'd take half of said pension, which would essentially F him over for the rest of his life. I do have to admit, that's a well-written non-apology, cunningly disguised as an apology. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.